It's proven that this league is against Caitlin Clark and the Fever. They hate him. I mean, they hate him with a passion. I mean, they hate him so much, they want to hurt him. Physically inflict harm on these women, bro.
The WNBA has been caught in a massive lie. For weeks, they dangled the promise of Caitlin Clark's return in front of millions of fans, selling tickets, merchandise, and a story of false hope. But behind the curtain, it was a scam. The Indiana Fever were allegedly hiding a secret second injury in a desperate cash grab, stringing along their own supporters to keep the money flowing. This wasn't just mismanagement, it was a calculated deception that has fans demanding refunds, calling for boycotts, and threatening to sue the league into the ground. This is the story of how the WNBA's greed led to a shocking cover-up that could destroy the very league it was trying to save.
I'm not even going to say Indiana Fever fans. Caitlin Clark fans are crashing out at a different level. And I don't blame them. I don't.
The Indiana Fever front office is caught red-handed, lying to reporters.
To understand the scale of this disaster, you first have to understand what Caitlin Clark represented. She wasn't just another rookie you could plug into a roster. Commentators and analysts weren't exaggerating when they called her a billion-dollar entity. She was an economic engine on a scale the WNBA had never before witnessed. Her debut season triggered what was known as the Clark effect. Ticket prices on secondary markets surged by over 200%. Teams moved their games to larger NBA arenas just to accommodate the demand, and viewership for nationally televised games shattered all previous records.
Fans, y'all, we might have a case here. We might have a case to sue not only the Indiana Fever, but the WNBA for misleading us.
Her Indiana Fever jersey became the highest selling of any athlete in any sport on draft night. She was single-handedly responsible for a tidal wave of mainstream interest, attracting millions of casual fans to a league that had fought for decades just to stay relevant. She was, in every sense, the future. And then, just as quickly as she had arrived, she vanished. On July 15th, during a seemingly routine game, Clark went down with a groin injury that immediately benched her indefinitely. The initial news was a major blow, but what happened next is what turned genuine concern into deep suspicion, and that suspicion into pure, unadulterated outrage. Her absence wasn't just a setback for the team, it became a never-ending mystery novel, and the league was busy writing chapters that made less and less sense.
In what seems to be a strategic ploy to drive ticket sales and merchandise sales by suggesting that Caitlin Clark's return was on the horizon.
Well, that injury, the new injury, yet another injury. The Indiana Fever's got $1 billion entity on their team. $1 billion damn dollars.
With their billion-dollar star on the sidelines, the Indiana Fever and the WNBA launched a calculated campaign, dangling promises of her return like a cheap carrot on a stick. It started subtly. First, it was just a week, then another. With each passing game, a new breadcrumb of false hope was strategically dropped for the fans. She's almost back, they'd hint. She's looking good in practice, making progress. These updates were always just vague enough to be deniable, but just hopeful enough to keep the money pouring in. And it worked, spectacularly. Fans, absolutely desperate to witness the Phenom back on the court, kept buying expensive tickets, filling arenas not just in Indiana, but across the entire country.
The Indiana Fever have got themselves a problem. They got themselves a real problem after, of course, we found out that Caitlin Clark suffered yet another injury literally 2 weeks to today ago.
They booked non-refundable flights, reserved hotels, and renewed their streaming subscriptions, all under the belief that her grand comeback was just around the corner. They were investing their time, their emotions, and their hard-earned money into a comeback story that the league allegedly knew was never actually happening. Fans were being sold a product, Caitlin Clark, on the court that the league knew it couldn't deliver. That sickening feeling of deception began to fester, but that wasn't even the whole story. While the front office was busy spinning its intricate web of lies, the team on the court was actively falling apart.
Whoever is representing Caitlyn is going to win. Sophie Cunningham is going to win. Everybody's going to win because at the end of the day, we know there is valuable and real deal evidence proving that this league is against Caitlyn Clark and the Fever.
Just as the questions and frustrations around Clark's prolonged absence were intensifying, disaster struck the team yet again. Sophie Cunningham, the team's undisputed enforcer and Clark's on-court bodyguard, went down with a devastating season-ending knee injury. This wasn't just a case of losing another player, it was a catastrophic strategic blow that sent shockwaves through the fan base. Cunningham was the heart, the grit, and the raw physicality of the Indiana Fever. She was the one who absorbed the hard fouls, dished out the tough defense, and consistently stood up to opponents who targeted Clark with overly aggressive play from her very first day in the league. With Cunningham gone, the Fever didn't just lose a player, they lost their protector.
What happened to Sophie Cunningham and all of the other damn Fever players? Oh, it's getting real. Oh, it's definitely getting real.
They lost their identity. The team was now completely defenseless, and Clark, whenever she did eventually return, would be more vulnerable than ever before. For fans, this felt like a cruel, twisted joke, a perfect storm of incompetence and bad luck. The one person who could keep their superstar safe was now gone, and this only amplified the growing sense of dread and conspiracy. And with their only line of defense now gone, the secrets being kept by the front office were about to get a whole lot worse.
This is why they cannot get ahead, because they are not credible. They are not credible reporters. They are not credible at all.
The simmering frustration finally exploded into a full-blown inferno when the hidden truth was dragged into the light. It turned out the initial groin injury wasn't the only thing keeping Caitlyn Clark off the court. Through inside sources and reluctant reporting, fans discovered that she was also nursing a completely separate injury, an ankle bone bruise, which she had supposedly picked up during the August 7th game against the Phoenix Mercury. This critical piece of information wasn't shared when it happened. No, instead, it was conveniently concealed and only revealed weeks later after the fan backlash had become an uncontrollable wildfire.
She got hurt around the 7th. You knew prior to you going to ESPN that Caitlyn Clark wasn't coming back when you said she was going to come back. You're lying. You're lying and you're misleading, and it's looking real spooky. And I'm happy the fans are standing up.
This was the smoking gun. It confirmed every dark suspicion that fans had been harboring for weeks. They weren't just being strung along with optimistic timelines. They were being actively deceived in a full-blown cover-up. The team knew about a second significant injury, yet they continued to sell tickets and promote games based on the false hope of her return from the first one. To make matters worse, fan-shot footage from that Phoenix game began circulating online, showing Clark walking after the game without any visible limp or sign of trouble, which led many to believe the team's entire timeline was a fabrication designed to hide their own incompetence. The lies were piling up, and the entire organization was about to be exposed.
They had already knew Caitlyn Clark wasn't going to play in that damn All-Star game, right? Knowing what we know now, they could have told us immediately Caitlyn wasn't going to play. But they waited like 3-4 days for the All-Star game. Now, I was set to go to the All-Star game, but I said, you know what? No, I'm going to just boycott it because I just didn't like how Caitlyn Clark was getting abused.
The chaos wasn't just happening behind closed doors. It was spilling out into the public eye, revealing a front office and coaching staff in a state of complete meltdown. The disaster tour was publicly led by head coach Stephanie White. During a national ESPN broadcast on August 12th, she confidently told the world that Clark was close to returning. The only problem, Clark had already sustained the second hidden ankle injury nearly a week before that statement. This meant White was either completely clueless about the health of her own superstar player, or she was flat out lying to a national audience of millions.
Caitlyn Clark has been sidelined for the Indiana Fever since July 15th due to a groin injury. Yes, we know that. While fans would love to see her back on the court, there's a legitimate chance she's held out until 2026.
When reporters later pressed her for any clarity, she became snippy and fired back with the now infamous line, "Do you see her at practice? Then why are you asking?" It was a stunning display of arrogance and unprofessionalism that showed utter contempt for the very fans whose money was paying her salary. Then, things got even worse. A serious report surfaced that assistant coach Brienne January may have actually stepped on Clark's injured foot during a practice, worsening her condition. the team, predictably, denied everything. And in the most bizarre and disrespectful moment of all, Fever beat reporter Scott Agnes was seen on camera laughing while discussing Clark's injury status, a move that fans saw as the ultimate slap in the face. It was a complete circus of incompetence, and the fans were done being the audience.
You got this video right here that a lot of you have already seen. I just saw it in the last couple of days of Caitlin getting stepped on by a coach right there on the left.
Stepped on by the coach, and I think she's going to be all right based upon the grin on her face. But
the left foot.
And I really feel like we will just get the similar outcome that we had with Caitlin Clark this year in terms of she's just going to get beat up on. And now this team is already injured, and you're already not playing.
This is where the collective frustration turned into a full-blown, organized uprising. Fans weren't just annoyed anymore. They were furious, and they were organized. They realized they had been systematically conned, their passion and loyalty exploited for ticket sales. The stories of betrayal flooded social media and fan forums. We're not talking about a few angry tweets, we're talking about fans who had spent thousands of dollars on non-refundable travel and premium tickets. Dedicated social media accounts and websites were created to track the team's lies in real time. Petitions demanding transparency and accountability from the league gained tens of thousands of signatures in mere hours.
The team is a mess, the Indiana Fever, right? They have all these injuries. This is not the complete team. If Caitlin Clark does come back, the question would remain, is she actually 100%? So now you're going to potentially have Caitlin Clark go out there.
Because you won't be open and you won't be honest. Y'all are talking about Caitlin Clark coming back. We've got two different Fever reporters, both reporting the injury did not and the injury did hamper her coming out.
Calls for a league-wide boycott began to trend nationally, but it didn't stop there. Fans began using legal language, accusing the Fever and the WNBA of consumer fraud and bait-and-switch tactics, with many threatening to join class action lawsuits. In the most telling move of all, a movement began demanding that Clark abandon the Fever's medical staff entirely and return to her trusted former doctors at the University of Iowa. It was a complete and total collapse of faith in a professional sports organization, and the people who had been the most excited about the WNBA's future were now leading the charge to tear it all down.
I hate to do this to him, but we need to boycott Scott Agnes, bro, because you is part of the problem. You're lying to the people, and you're supposed to be looked upon as a person we can count on for credibility and to keep it transparent with the fans.
And they're a bunch of clowns, a bunch of bozos. You guys look completely incompetent and unprofessional.
When you pull back the curtain on this entire scandal, you see that this isn't just about one team's spectacular failure to manage a crisis. It's a symptom of a much deeper, more systemic problem within the WNBA itself. The league has famously never turned a profit in its entire history. For decades, it has been propped up by the NBA, constantly searching for that one spark that could finally help it achieve financial independence. Caitlin Clark was that spark. She was their golden goose, a walking, breathing revenue machine who arrived just as the league was preparing to negotiate a new massive television rights deal. And in their desperation to cash in on her arrival, they leaned into short-term exploitation instead of building long-term credibility.
The Indiana Fever know people have been spending money on tickets and travel and blah, 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 thinking that Caitlin Clark was her anticipated comeback. People tuning in and showing up at games, they need to understand.
They saw her not as a franchise player to be protected for the next decade, but as a short-term asset to be squeezed for every last dollar, even at the cost of their own integrity. This scandal exposed everything that critics have whispered about for years: a stunning lack of transparency, questionable medical oversight, and a desperate tendency to prioritize optics over substance. The league was so busy patting itself on the back for its newfound growth that it completely failed to build the professional foundation needed to sustain it. And now, that weak, fragile foundation was crumbling before the entire world.
You guys look completely incompetent and unprofessional. The way this has been handled, oh, it's a joke. It's a joke.
To present a facade of hopeful updates masking the true status of a beloved player's injury. Now, this is the truth. Oh my.
While fans were being lied to by the team, the very people meant to hold them accountable, the media were caught in their own ugly civil war. On one side, you had the official league-affiliated reporters and broadcast partners, many of whom seemed content to parrot the team's vague and optimistic talking points without question. They reported the day-to-day updates and the close-to-returning narratives as fact. On the other side, you had a growing army of independent content creators, fan journalists and podcasters who acted as digital detectives. They were the ones scrutinizing game footage, digging up conflicting timelines, and giving a platform to the outraged fans who felt ignored by the mainstream.
All right? People have been trying to stay invested because the GOAT was supposed to be coming back.
This created a whirlwind of misinformation and confusion. One reporter would claim the ankle was the primary issue holding up her return, while another would insist it was a minor setback. The result was a complete breakdown of reliable information, which only fueled the fan-led conspiracy theories. This war of words culminated in the infamous clip of the Fever beat reporter laughing about the situation, an act that fans saw as proof that the official media wasn't on their side. They were part of the problem, laughing while fans were losing their money and their minds.
Pattern of communication between league officials and team medical reports raises concerns of coordinated misrepresentation rather than independent factual reporting. This coordinated message suggests an underlining.
Lost in the raging storm of lies, lawsuits, and media chaos was the deafening silence of Caitlin Clark herself. As the controversy spiraled out of control, the one person who could have cleared the air with a single statement remained completely quiet. Where was she? Why wasn't she speaking out? Her silence became a blank canvas onto which everyone projected their own theories. Was she under a strict gag order from the Indiana Fever, legally bound to stay quiet to protect the organization's narrative? Was she playing the long game, advised by her agents to stay above the fray and preserve her own brand from the mudslinging? Or, in the most cynical but plausible view, was she somehow complicit, willingly participating in the deception to maintain leverage or for reasons unknown? This final layer of mystery was perhaps the most maddening for her supporters. They saw her as a victim, yet her lack of a statement made it impossible to know the full story. Her silence transformed her from an active participant into a mysterious figurehead at the center of a scandal she couldn't or wouldn't address, leaving her millions of fans to fight a war for her without their general.
This is when I believe she got hurt. Well after that game. Guys, it is definitely, we can't trust them. They lose all trust.
In the end, the fallout from the Caitlin Clark scandal has left the WNBA submerged in a devastating trust crisis from which it may never recover. The credibility of both the Indiana Fever and the league itself has been shattered into a million pieces. Fans feel duped, lied to, and treated like walking wallets instead of loyal supporters. And once that sacred trust is gone, it's almost impossible to ever get it back. The league is now facing a war on two fronts, a potential legal battle with its own enraged fan base, and a public relations nightmare that has undone years of progress in just a few short weeks. The very people who fueled Clark's historic rise, the new subscribers, the sold-out ticket buyers, are now the ones leading the charge against the institution. So the final haunting question remains, even when Caitlin Clark finally steps back onto the court: can the league ever truly recover? The billion-dollar player brought in millions of new fans, but the WNBA's shocking deception might be the very thing that drives them all away for good, shattering the legacy she was supposed to build.